don't know if they're automatically going to assume this is the first dealer.
Everything seems like
You know, the
working
casino, they
well.
draw cards for the seats. I don't know how he does it here. So.
2 headphones.
I'm sure if you drew cards, he's not going to care.
Nice. Have good pickup on it. This one's
middle two then? Or just doesn't matter?
just,
Step on any toes.
you might want to sit there. You got that. Cool.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Okay. Here.
Are you starting with this seat one as the dealer automatically?
Here we are.
Cards.
Picking me up.
Go again.
You got it?
Yeah.
I can sort of hear myself.
Yeah, it's deceiving.
Can
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
You guys hear me okay in there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
Great. All right, we're getting underway with Akron Poker League, the final game, which is broadcast on pokeronair.com. And we have Steve Day, who is our chip leader, or our point leader for the season. Hopefully I'll be able to say that later. And so thank you, Vicky, for dealing. And I guess we'll get underway, and I'll try to announce.
Good luck. Good luck.
Button is on Chris Becker.
And we're underway.
Welcome, everyone, to the championship game for the Akron Poker League.
I know I'm glad to be here.
This is exactly where I wanted to be, too.
I'm sorry.
Definitely talk better than I play at times.
Is it showing?
Not nearly as much heartache when you're back in the booth.
He's showing our cards.
No, it's not. You guys want to read? Wait a second.
Yeah,
Reveal that?
I'd like to do that.
Sorry about that. We were showing cards when I was testing the table. That's one heck of a way to play.
All right, we got a little technical mishap the first hand. We're going to start all over. That's good. There wasn't much going that hand anyway.
No, we want coolers only. Some hearts broken.
Dream shattered.
I didn't see it until he said it. I would have found it.
Well, any prediction for tonight?
Well, the momentum might be rolling with the two players that made this seat last week in the wild card game. So they are not quite as rusty as the other players. The other ones, they played really well throughout the season. So we'll see how it shakes out tonight.
Ricky calls.
All right, we got Derby with jacks here.
Derby jacks, Allen with tens.
Allen raises with tens.
Derby calls.
Put your cards on there.
Allen generally a very aggressive
As long as they're
player.
red, then they can move in.
Yeah, he's hard to play against. He kind of doesn't really fit the mold of the older
Ricky
poker
calls
players.
you.
Right, he could have any two cards at any time.
3 players to the flop. Rick Dack first. 250 bet.
Only one over.
by
Let's see
Allen.
what Allen bets 250.
Allen wasted no time to make a C bet here.
Derby very tight, so let's see what he does.
You can tell by him shuffling his cards, he's not quite comfortable.
Derby calls.
But he figures, hey,
Rick
I at least got
folds.
to peel one with a solid starting hand.
Allen Dack first.
Another club here would be nice on the river.
It'd make things awfully interesting for sure. This is another one of
Derby
those spots
bets
where
250.
whoever's most aggressive generally will take control of the
Allen
hand.
calls.
Check.
Jacks.
That could check,
And
bet,
check,
call.
check. Yeah, check, call, and then check, check on the river. And Derby takes down the first one.
Everyone can breathe easy now knowing busting the first hand.
I'm tied for second.
Actually pretty well played by both players.
We're gonna shuffle these.
That's what we should do.
I don't terribly love the
Always same
the
person.
call on 4th
Yeah,
Street
you're
by
gonna
Allen,
try
but
to keep
I
off
guess
the
he was
All
sensors,
right.
Yeah,
using a little bit of small ball there.
There's not much there that he can beat when Derby bets a turn.
You already got two.
I got two as well.
I started with you.
folds over to Chris. Chris calls 50.
The early stages of these one-table tournaments is always interesting. You know, you want to kind of get
Mike
a
Stack
feel of
calls
the
50.
game flow
Right.
and see who's going to
Rick
be
checks
coming
his
out
option.
firing and who's going to be sitting back on their haunches.
Mike just checks the big blind with ace 10 after Chris and Ricky limp in.
Good morning. Not a bad flop for Chris.
And Chris's usual
bets
game
200.
is
Chris calls 200. Mike Stack folds.
let's see if he just smooth calls it. Yeah.
If I was Chris in this
Both
situation,
players check.
knowing that he's
Ooh.
fairly aggressive, I think he probably could go out with a raise on the flop here. Because all draws are calling, all queens are probably
Rick bets
calling.
350.
Especially against Ricky. He's kind of loose.
Yeah, and he's coming in looking like a character from Breaking Bad tonight.
And the 7's pretty much an irrelevant card.
Right.
Because if he's got
Chris
a queen,
raises
he's
to
got to
900.
beat most of the time.
This is a good raise size by Chris. Rick bet 350 and Chris made 900.
Rick folds.
Wow, good fold. Really good fold. Which is probably the best idea in the early stages. You don't want to get yourself too much of a hole.
Yeah, especially that week. There's really nothing you can beat there.
I figured you had the 9.
First
I
act
didn't
will be
know you had
Allen.
the queen.
Not too much going on here. Steve Day with a suited connector. Chris with an ace 9. He'll probably get in there.
Derby called. Steve called. Chris called.
I expect to see a lot of limping
Mike Stack
here.
calls.
This is a very limpy table.
Rick calls. Annette calls.
None of those young guns out there raising all the limps.
And Steve flops a flush draw. Derby flops top pair. Mike flops top pair with a big kicker.
Checks over to Derby. Derby bets 150.
I don't mind the lead here.
You
If
find
he-
out where
Steve Day
you're
calls
at.
150.
If he gets called, you know, you might
Chris
think
folds.
twice what he might do on 4th Street, but
Mike Stack calls 150.
if I was Mike, I'd definitely be raising here.
Rick folds.
You gotta get all those flush draws out of there, possible straight draws.
Annette folds.
See an 8. Thank you.
There you go.
You know, you ask for it and it just comes
Derby
sometimes.
bets 300.
And this is where I would like to see Steve either, put the pressure on your opponents here.
Steve calls 300.
Yeah, Steve doesn't like to do that too much. A 7 here would be
As a
beautiful
reminder,
on
starting
the
stack
river.
was 5,000.
It's a camouflage. You wouldn't
300
put
call by
anybody
Mike Stack.
on 9-10 spot. 9-10 clubs is about the only hand that shows up.
And that locks it up for Derby.
We'll see
Derby
what
bets
Mike does
500.
here with the top pair second kicker. Steve showed a pretty good idea that with 2 other players in the hand, that his 9's probably not any good.
Steve
Yeah.
Day folds.
He's aware.
Mike Stack
Wow.
folds.
Mike just on soul read.
Put that on the fold. Derby.
I think Derby showed his hand there.
I don't think so.
Okay,
Most
good job.
cards.
Never show your
Take
cards,
them off.
people. Unless I ask you to, then
Derby day.
Always
You know,
obliged.
I don't mind every now and then when I've got the big hand to show 'em a couple.
Boston, let's be honest. He's like a needle, everybody.
Oh, we got a net with aces, Derby with 3s.
Ooh, this could be the old husband-wife
Yeah.
tango here.
We'll see how big a raises we get here.
200.
Derby bets 200.
Derby,
Coming out firing. He says, "Hey, I'm gonna win every hand tonight,
I think he'll get re-raised here by his wife.
without a doubt."
Under 2.
I think in most cases, if Annette was flag called, I think Alan might come along. But she will raise.
Raised to 600 by Annette.
Just a little min raise.
Alan folds.
Derby knows his wife pretty well. You know, she's not gonna 3-bet without the goods too often.
400 for Derby to call.
But he might think he's on
I
a
was
heater.
gonna say it might be worth it to go set mine in here.
Derby does call.
Ace 3 would be my dream flop here. That should end things.
Annette checks.
Oh, Derby's gonna bet his
Derby.
threes.
Derby just stepping right in
Derby
right
bet
now.
600.
Oh, just call. Slow play your husband.
Annette calls.
Oh,
Ooh, it's a little slower. If I was her, I would slow down just a little bit. No, don't lead.
don't
Don't lead.
If you're gonna lead there, you should check raise.
900
You
bet
sh-
by Annette.
You should have check raised on the flop.
You're chasing out
Derby folds.
every hand that you
Yeah.
possibly bluff. Even and who cares? I mean, if you check and he checks back, you can throw a little bit down the river. What if a 3 comes in the river?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like your
That's.
medium.
You're
Yeah, I
gonna
think it's
immediately
scary.
get all his
Hair, I
money,
thought this
and you
was
have
scary.
bragging rights at
Or
home.
if he had the big flush draw.
Straight flush draw.
What if he has a jack?
Yeah.
You know, all these situations where there's no need to lead out in that spot.
Yeah, go with it.
Yeah. I think she knows her husband well enough
Papa's
that if he
eating
had a
first.
jack, he wasn't folding.
Yeah, maybe that's their plan all along. Unless he had 4 of them, then
Yeah.
that's just the way it shakes out.
You just stand up and walk out.
Shake hands.
Papa's
Hey,
eating,
say
call
good hand, then walk out.
Mike Stack
Gracefully.
calls 50.
Call.
Rick calls 50. Annette calls 50.
Couple suited
Small
connectors here.
blind. Alan calls 50, and Derby checks his option.
Allen in with the 10-3 suited.
He would like to see spades here.
And
That's what
Allen flops 2 pair. Papa Z flops top pair.
Alan obviously knew the flop was going to be 10-3 king.
Alan bets 250.
Only reason he stuck
I'm gonna
around.
say it's hard to get Papa to fold top pair, so
Oh no, I got it right here.
Papa Z calls 250.
Hundreds for something? I don't know.
Mike folds. Rick folds. Annette folds.
Now I get my 3 on the flop.
650.
650 bet by Alan.
Now, on Alan's spot, I would have bet
Papa
as
calls.
much as I possibly could have, knowing that Papa's only
oh, that's brutal. That's so brutal.
Papa's
Oh,
only calling.
wonder.
700
And Papa
bet
Z
by
will
Papa
only
Z.
call too. That's the bad part.
2 pair.
And Alan has the first cooler of the evening.
Yeah, see.
Papa Z, he's magical with that. Don't mind elevator music, folks.
I hit pocket diamonds.
Small, big.
Nice hand, Papa.
That's not elevator music. That's a theme song from way before you were born.
Care to share?
The banana splits.
Small, big.
I serve those up all the time.
You're big blind, Papa.
Steve with pocket sevens.
Steve did act
You
first.
picked it up.
Oh, did I?
Couple 10-8s, queen 8.
Let's
6
see.
minutes, 15 seconds left in
Net
the
has the
blind.
4s.
Steve just
Steve
limps
calls.
in with the sevens.
Chris calls.
It opens the door for a lot more limpers. A net with 4s.
Alan, your cards didn't read.
I don't usually like limping, but a table like this where you can get away with it
Oh,
more
yeah.
often than not. When you
Yeah,
just-
if
either
you
small
can-
pairs.
You can control the pot size.
Annette raised to 375.
375 with 4s.
Maybe Annette's the young gun that doesn't like the limpers. She's coming after
Folds
him.
over to Steve Day.
She, I know she can be
Steve Day
a
calls
little wild
375.
sometimes.
But in hindsight, this is where if Steve would have min raised, he
Chris
could have
folds.
kept Annette from
Right.
raising bigger than a min raise, which could
Right.
possibly
She'd
save
have
him
just
more money.
called, she'd have just smooth called a raise or small raise.
I think a 4 and a 7 are both folded, so it might be tough to flop a set for either of them. This is where Annette raising pre-flop, if she continuations bets, she more
Yeah.
likely to take down the pot.
Oh yeah, with
Steve
two
checks.
with the ace king out there. But she knows.
Don't check Annette.
375 bet by
She
Annette.
doesn't.
Yeah, Steve will fold.
Steve folds.
Well played by Annette. can still see the steam coming off Alan's head right
Action
now.
on Chris to act
In that pot
first.
against Papa Z.
Yeah, he's one of the few people that can get as hot as I can when he loses a hand like that.
It's not a competition, though.
Oh, we got a couple of big hands here.
Now we're talking. Whenever I see Greg's name, I always think it's Greg Merson. I'm like, who invited the main event champion to our game?
Greg raises to 275.
And Derby with Greg with queens, Derby with kings.
Okay, look at
Rick
Derby.
calls.
Derby's literally bouncing in his seat right now. Something the other players should, definitely take note of.
Ricky called with the ace-8 of diamonds.
Derby calls 275.
Derby just calls. That really disguises the strength of his hand right now.
It does. I wouldn't mind it in a heads-up pot.
Right,
You're going
when there's more
three-way,
than-
I'm not as big of a fan.
Yeah, he does that a lot. I've seen him. And that's why you don't do it.
Everybody knows when you have pocket kings, there's at least 11 aces in the deck, and every one of
Rick
them
to act
will
first.
hit the flop.
Aces and kings are hands you just don't want to play multiple
check.
ways.
He's hiding.
Oh, there it is. Checks over to Derby.
Checks
Derby
around.
checks.
Pretty innocuous 3 in the turn.
Greg checks. Rick bets 250.
I like this sizing. Very rarely will an ace check through in a flop when it's raised pre-flop, so he should feel fairly confident he has the best hand right now.
Derby folds.
Yeah, Greg won't fold. Yeah.
Greg Melton calls.
No coolers on the river.
Let's see if he throws a little.
What is he?
Both players check.
Ooh, I would have like
I'd
three,
like
like,
seeing the
three,
value
like
bet.
375 or something right there.
A little value bet would have got paid off there.
I had queens.
Heisenberg wins the pot.
I had 2 cards at home. One had some spots.
You sure?
I think.
Action on Greg to act first.
Greg with aces this hand. Annette with ace queen. We could get a little action here.
Absolutely. Especially after Greg losing that last pot, people might think he's
Ace
steaming.
250 by
Yeah.
Greg.
I always love to pick up a big hand after losing a hand.
And he actually, he could even act it up a little bit.
Rick
Act
calls
like he's
250.
steaming more than he is. Make a bigger raise.
Annette calls 250.
People might stick around.
Annette just calls the pre-flop race with ace queen.
Chris, you call. Chris called
I'll
250.
go 4 ways here.
Here's my king again. One hand, always two.
Even though you were complaining about the
Ricky with the gut shot.
always one hand,
That's
two
about
lane.
it going on.
Greg bets 1100.
Big bet by Greg.
Yeah.
A little nervous. I guess he's just hoping someone has a king, or he's trying to chase out any of those flush draws.
Yeah, when you get that
Rick
many
folds.
callers, you would
Annette
expect a king to be out there.
Without a doubt.
I think he just got unlucky there that
Chris
it wasn't a
folds.
queen.
Absolutely. Or flop top set.
Your pocket queens were good this time.
Huh?
Your pocket queens were good this time.
Yeah.
But moves Mike Stack to act first.
Small
Go
blind.
off.
Funny in that put him on pocket queens when she had a
Yes,
queen in
you
her
will.
hand.
I think that was Vicky that said that.
Oh. Vicky. Dealers. Dealers aren't supposed to talk about hands.
And now Allen with the king 9 suited.
Another ace for Vicky, or
Annette
for
calls
Annette rather.
50.
Greg Merson
30
with the
seconds
ace,
left in the
ace
blind.
nines. Let's see if he tries to parlay these few hands together here.
Alan calls 50. Steve calls 50. Chris calls 50.
Chris with the
Greg checks his
6-9.
options.
Steve with 5-8 of spades. We got a lot of different hands going on here. I'm pretty sure somebody will hit this flop. And Steve Day with the straight flush draw.
Who doesn't like one of those? This adds a little excitement to your evening.
Chris bets 225.
Chris bets with second pair.
Which
Next hand will be
he's never been
5100.
too shy about doing that.
Right.
Annette calls 225.
Annette calls with second pair, bigger kicker.
And Steve having position, I wouldn't mind a raise
Steve
here.
calls 225.
Oh, I love a raise here. You want to build a pot up if that hits.
You know, he almost has, you know, the same amount of equity as Annette does in this hand. Why not get the pot as big as you can and take control on the turn? Or just win it on the flop.
Chris checks.
So you see by just adding one card, he goes from a
Annette
44%
checks.
chance to win down to 27.
400 bet by Steve Day.
Now he bets. See, I would have liked the raise there on the flop
Yeah, if
instead of betting the turn.
he's just playing a guessing game right now, hoping, you know, just hoping.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in a spot where you're hoping. You want to have a game plan with clear-cut actions.
Chris calls 400. Annette folds.
Interesting card by Chris.
Chris Sack first.
And there's the straight flush.
I like that, folks. We know how to deal him out here. Steve's going to double check, make sure that
Yeah,
he
don't
didn't,
overbet it.
make sure he didn't forget what he had in his old age.
And I wouldn't have. Oh.
725 bet by Chris Becker.
Oh, don't raise it too big, Steve.
Click it back. Just click it back.
Yeah.
1,500. Which I've seen Steve do on a number of occasions, so I think this is probably running through his mind.
Yeah, you don't want to overbet this.
1650.
Raised
Okay,
to
not too
1650
bad.
by Steve Day.
1650. That's not much more than a click back.
Just for you folks at home, a clickback is a online term where you instantly click the raise button, which is a absolute double of the other raise, or of the bet rather.
Chris folds.
Chris,
And Steve shows the straight flush.
and that's the rules, you know. If you have quads or straight flush, you might as well show everything.
Everybody wants to show them monsters.
Straight flush.
Look at that smile on his face.
Wow.
No matter what happens, he knows that, you know, go home and tell his family he had a straight flush
He
on
had a nut flush. I was over
the
there.
final game of the AkronPoker League.
1,500.
It's always nice to get them broadcast, too, for everybody to see them.
Yeah, make sure, you know, everyone knows he's not lying about it.
15 minutes, 25 seconds left in the blinds.
We'll fold.
A lot of
Folds over
garbage
to
here.
Derby.
250.
Derby raises to 250.
Pretty standard raise by Derby. A little large
Folds
for my
over to
liking,
Chris.
but. 1,500.
That's one thing about this crowd. They 25.50. 25.50 are the blinds.
You have a pair.
Mike Stack and the big blind fold.
I had
We
that
get a
big
lot
one,
of
my little
overbets
share.
early.
Yeah, when you
If
bet,
you'll
I
notice, a
knew I
lot
was
of
done.
them that bet that big early, when the blinds are up, they're still raising the same amount.
I mean, and it gets you in a lot of trouble, you know. If you're raising that much, the only people that are calling you generally have a better hand.
Right.
Huh? Good advice.
Oh, yeah, the mid raise I would have
And the goal is to put pressure on everybody else. You don't want to have the pressure put back on you when you've already given up so much of a percentage of your stack. Looks like the Queen Jack found somebody else's hand.
I don't know why I thought you had that.
Derby calls.
Annette with another ace.
Looks like Annette had called also. Raised to 250 by Steve Day.
Steve raises his Queen Jack to 250.
Poker a lot of times ends up being a bit of a copycat situation.
Yeah.
Especially
Once
Six
somebody
ones to be
starts setting
fine.
the tone on the amount for the raise, it tends
especially
to stay there.
especially when it works for them. They realize, hey, what works for them, maybe it'll work for me.
Let's see what Annette does with the ace rag here after she limped in.
Annette calls 250.
Calls at 250.
Derby calls 250.
And Derby calls with a 9-10 offsuit.
First act will
They'll
be
be like, well,
Annette.
if she's doing it, I might go do it too.
And she flops top pair.
Why not?
300.
300 bet by Annette. Derby folds.
And this is something, you know, that people should pick up on. When she hits a piece of the flop, she tends to lead out into the pre-flop raiser. But you're really going to kill a lot of your
Steve folds.
chances to win big pots when you lead out that way.
And that move for you fans at home is affectionately known as,
A donk bet.
because most pre-flop raisers will continuation bet
Yeah, you're
if
making
it's checked to
down.
them.
you're making so much more money by checking than ever leading out. Again, if you lead out and you get raised, it's only because someone has a hand generally, stronger than yours.
All right, we got a couple of decent hands here. Ace King
Alan calls
suited for
100.
Greg. Annette's got sixes.
Derby
Alan's
calls
got
100.
fours. Derby's got an ace.
Chris calls
Nine.
100.
We'll see how the Ace King versus the small pairs with the raise
Mike
size
Stack
look like.
raises to 325. I'm sorry, Greg Melton raises to 325.
Greg, after a few limpers, Greg raises it pretty big there with the ace
Annette
king.
calls. Alan calls.
I was going to say Alan will absolutely call with a pair.
Again, possibly
Derby
still
folds.
steaming from that earlier hand where he lost, a decent percentage of his stack.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Chris call here.
Chris calls.
Yeah.
Chris
325.
does get, a little loosey-goosey with hands like this. Watching too many replays of Daniel Negreanu, thinking that, he's just going to get
And
there.
Greg flops the nuts.
First act is net.
I hope he checks it. Give somebody a chance to hit something.
This is in your spot since he was a pre-flop
Checks
raiser.
around.
And he does.
And it just gets worse for him.
Yeah.
This is where I just do something loopy. Bet like 200.
That's what I was just going to say. 200.
Greg bets 325.
Which was smaller. It was smaller than his pre-flop raise, which, is generally the same idea.
Yeah, you make that small bet and it just screams trying to
Net
take it
down.
down with
Yeah.
nothing.
Well, at least it gives him,
Chris folds.
something to think about. Which,
That,
something you always want to do. I always have him thinking. Alright, so Greg, excuse me. So Greg has had
Derby
aces
to act
and
first.
queens and ace king, and it's worked out for him 2 out of 3 times.
That's a pretty good percentage.
I'm sure, like him, like most people would prefer to have those when it's 3-handed or heads up, but you take them when you get them.
Alright, there's not a lot going on here, and nobody wants to limp in with
Folds around
their
to the button.
medium hands.
Somebody's shutting
Rick should be raising this almost 100% of the time,
I don't know.
Rick calls 100.
Man, it's not mine.
and limping
doesn't come
about
up on the
0.
screen.
Looks like phonies.
But he does have position, so maybe he has some devious plans for on the flop.
No, I'm kidding you, Tony. It's flat.
Is it?
425.
Is it 425?
425.
Okay, Annette raised to 425.
And that is why you raise pre-flop.
Rick limps in, so Annette
Action on
raises
Rick.
with 10-7 off.
What can I say?
Rick calls 425.
And
Now
he
plays,
calls.
and now he plays the guessing game. All these things can be avoided if he raises pre-flop. Now he's stuck in no man's land, and Annette will probably.
No,
you know,
she'll bet here. She's got to. If you're going to rep that hand right pre-flop, you got to
Annette bets
follow through.
425.
Yeah, you got to follow through.
Annette has really improved her game from the first time I started playing with her. She's really ratcheted up the aggression and taken pots like that normally that maybe she would have just
Right.
sacrificed. Well played.
I don't know, I shouldn't call that, but I was trying to get lucky once.
8 minutes, 56
Rick talked
seconds
about
left in the
getting
line.
lucky.
Lines at 5100.
She's a married man, Rick.
Rick with the kings and Steve with kings.
Ooh, buddy. We'll see how Steve's mannerisms change. That he hits a big hand here.
375.
Alan with deuces. Let's see if he don't usually fold a pre-flop pair.
Steve has the raise to 375.
It's like,
Folded around to Ricky B.
And he's shaking like crazy. That's usually the adrenaline pumping through somebody's veins right there.
that's why I have all my blood removed before I go play a poker tournament. You can't have the shakes like that.
Ricky B calls.
Ooh, and a flat
375.
call on the cutoff.
Well, Allen folded the deuces. It's hard to believe.
Allen was out of position. He
He
lost.
still
he lost-
usually likes to play them pairs.
He
though.
absolutely does. He just, he lost a big chunk of chips early. I think he's planning on just, sitting back and waiting for the premiums. He's definitely happy he didn't see a deuce on the flop.
Steve on a free roll now.
Check.
Both players check.
And let's see if anybody takes the aggression here.
Steve bets here. I don't really imagine Rick sticking around.
350 bet by Steve Day.
You generally have to, respect Steve's betting. Doesn't get out of line too often.
Call by Ricky B.
What do I know? Rick sticks around.
See, Rick likes to play a lot of hands, so
Now Steve might be a little cautious that Rick might have the 10 ball.
yeah.
In bet 100. Steve Day.
Okay, so we
You
talked
bet
about
100 into that pot, Tony?
I don't.
I'm just gonna call.
This isn't quite the
Yeah.
same as earlier when I was talking about making a small goofy bet.
Oh my God.
Steve got called. He probably wasn't too excited about
for the
it,
camera.
and now he's more disappointed.
Yeah. He makes a good sized bet there. He doesn't get called, most likely.
And I know when you hit kings, you don't like to see an ace on the board,
Cholesterol's out there.
but he bet the turn and he bet the river. Granted, it wasn't very big, but say he doesn't have an ace, he's gonna lose the same amount on a flop bet than he would betting 4th Fifth Street. So he might as well take a chance at winning the pot on the flop,
Right.
opposed to hoping again on
That
the
he
turn
can,
and river.
right. A net with another ace queen.
That girl gets aces. No one's
Steve
business.
with eights.
We got a king jack by Mike Stack.
Steve calls 100.
King 10 by
Calls 100.
Ricky.
Mike Stack calls 100. Ricky B calls 100.
Right.
Yep. I was trying to get it out of my
Raised to
mouth, but
550
Annette
by
said it was
nine.
ready before I could even announce the fact that she's probably going to bump it up here, especially in position. Steve quickly
Call by
calls.
Steve Day.
At this point, I wouldn't even hate if Mike Stack called,
Folds.
because Ricky's probably going to call behind him here and get such a great price on your money.
Right.
Mike Stack folds.
Now, in this case, I
Ricky
would
B folds.
definitely flip out Rick. Good job. Who can outflop who?
Steve Dag first.
Well, Steve's got the best hand, but I don't know if he'll be able to.
350
Wow,
bet
he
by
leads
Steve Day.
out.
Another donk bet here. I generally raise donk bets because it's situations like this.
Annette folds.
They're not terribly scared of the flop, but they don't want to see what you do.
Remember that king
So if you re-raise them after they donk bet, well, they generally shrivel up and go away.
It all depends on who it is.
A lot,
Yeah,
true. They're definitely player dependent, and a lot of players like to bet like that on a draw.
Right.
Hoping if they
Chris
bet,
bet first.
350.
They're just throwing a blocker bet
If
out
If they're
there.
350 opposed to trying to call a bet of 500, it saves them 150 in the long run. Here's some hands.
Here we go.
Couple aces, ace jacks out there. Chris with the queens.
8-9 suited for Steve.
Raised to 325 by
I don't
Chris.
think Steve's going to get this 8-9 in here, though. 'Cause I think there's going to be a few raises.
Greg Melton calls 325.
Yeah, Steve
Greg
has,
just calls with the ace jack.
Steve had the button. He limp already gun. Or big blind.
Maybe he will get
Mike
to
Stack
play
calls
this.
325.
If we get a string of calls here, I'd take
Especially
off with the 8-9 suited.
after rocking one straight flush, he's probably thinks he's destined for a few tonight.
Yeah,
Steve calls.
absolutely. I'd call the big blind there.
Without a doubt. Playing the 8-9 suited is almost like set mining.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
you can get away
Steve
from them
first.
so easy if
You
you
know,
don't hit them
You
big.
flop huge, you're winning all the monies. If you whiff it,
And Chris flops top set,
You're getting
which
away from it.
should.
and no one else connected whatsoever here.
525
And he
bet
leads
by
out
Chris.
with top set.
I don't hate it as a pre-flop raiser, and Chris is a little more aggressive than most people. It's just he's a little unlucky that everyone just kind of just airballs
Whiffed
this one.
everything.
Greg folds. Mike folds.
And Steve folds.
We can see the future.
Steve Day folds.
There it goes.
But moves. Greg to act first.
I don't mind leading out with the set there if you've got a bunch of aggressive players.
Yeah,
You got a bunch of guys that are just calling raises and not playing back at you.
Yeah, I mean, we got to definitely have a hitter fold type table.
Greg calls 100.
Greg limps in with the 8-9 of clubs.
Mike stack with
Mike
Jack
calls 100.
7 of hearts also calls.
So I'm sick of watching everyone else play.
Alan calls 100. Derby calls 100.
Yeah, he does that every now and then. He just
Steve Day calls 100.
he'll get a hand he wants to play and he plays it no matter
Chris
what.
checks his option.
Who knows? Maybe
And
this-
it's usually against me and it usually beats me.
Yeah. Sometimes people just have their favorite hands and they.
And
Stick
Greg
around.
pops an open-ended straight flush draw
Hey,
here.
let's see two of them
Checks
tonight.
over to
What do you
Mike.
think?
That'd be fun. Chris with the gut shot draw. Alan with second pair.
Yeah, no aces
Mike
out
with
there.
second pair.
225 bet by Mike Stack.
Maybe this is his favorite
Alan
hand.
folds.
Playing a
And
little more aggressively than I thought he might.
Yeah,
Derby
Mike's
folds.
betting his second pair.
Steve folds.
I've seen him do this, and usually if he gets called, he slows
Chris
right
calls
down.
225. Greg calls 225.
Oh, I'd love to see a raise there. And he hits the straight.
Kaboom.
But that gives Chris.
Now,
Third.
Chris also had the open end.
Yeah,
Just
now
had to
Chris
tease it
has
to
an
low end.
open.
By Greg Melton.
And he's got the pair too now. So,
Tell you what.
oh, Greg, how much did Greg bet?
I don't know how they typing here is. Looks like maybe 625,
Mike folds.
650. Let's see if Chris gets sticky here.
This is not a surrender. I'm already out of hand.
I don't think Chris will raise, but
Chris going in the tank here.
Chris folds.
wisely
He lets
folds.
it go.
What do you say, Ricky?
Said I haven't seen a handkerchief pulled out in a long time.
You and I both pulled it.
Chris usually doesn't take that long to make a decision.
Well, you might only have about 2 beers in him at this point.
Oh, okay.
Mike Stack
That's true. It is early in the night.
Give him another 20 minutes.
I
200.
thought it was so cool. Pull it out for dinner.
A few more beers, need check raise all in there.
Absolutely. Fearless. Which, in the booth, we love.
Derby with the king jack.
Couple of connectors here.
Allen with the ace rag.
That was been pretty quiet. If we get the
Yeah, after he took that beat, he's
Ricky calls.
we might get after a little bit here.
Alan calls. Derby calls. Chris calls.
And the blinds get a cheap
Greg
one
checks
here.
his
it
option.
looks like it's already up to 1-2. Looks like a queen jack deuce flop, yeah. We got a couple jacks out there. Greg was in there with in the big blind with queen 6.
Which is,
425
I love
bet
me a
by Greg.
freebie. Yeah, 3 players with a jack here.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. 3.
A 10, a 6, or a king are all, or even a 10 are very interesting cards.
Derby calls 425.
A 6 would just be brutal.
Oh, that would be fun.
Chris calls 425.
I say brutal. Boston says fun. We don't know what he's rooting for. Straight pain. This might slow everybody down,
Checks around.
as it does. Where are you at, 6? Alright, well, Greg has the best of it. I wouldn't be surprised if it just checks through here.
Jacks.
Queen.
just because it has
Checks
decent
around.
showdown value.
Yeah.
And only thing it's calling you is something better. Not too often somebody
takes it down.
worse is going to call you on that river card.
And there's another reason if you're going to
Ricky
limp
beat act first.
pre-flop with king jack or a hand like that, why don't you raise? Queen six is going to fold.
It's not my rate.
You just give yourself so much more equity in the hand.
Oh, we're starting out with a hand already. Ace queen suited for Mike. Not a whole lot. Ricky with queen 10, Annette with 9-10.
Alan with another
Rick
ace.
called
Oh,
200.
did he?
Alan called 200.
And he's already limped in, so if Mike makes a raise here, we'll see
Greg
how
called 200.
much Alan likes his weak ace after that.
Raise.
Mike Stack raises 500 on top.
So a raise to 7 with everybody already in for 2. That's not a big raise.
See, we have 3 limpers in front of him. Yeah, I would have liked to see maybe around 850 or so.
Rick
If
folds.
if they have plans on limp calling, you got to punish those guys.
Alan folds.
But it's gonna get the job done.
Greg folds.
All the blinds.
Poker's so easy when you can see the cards.
But moves and
Just
attack
maybe
first.
invest in some X-ray specs
Yeah.
or something.
Or a mark deck.
Yes. But we do not condone cheating
No.
here at the Akron Poker League. So don't get any ideas out there.
Yeah, you're right.
Stay in school.
Ricky with 9s. Derby with a 4-6
Yeah,
suited.
we've had some good starting hands for the most part around the table.
And a few times we had them all in the same hand, which is where you usually get the real fun.
Yeah.
Alan all in.
Good luck.
Alan all in with his ace rag. And he'll probably get called by Ricky.
Well, we'll see how much it is.
Is it 1625?
1525.
1525 all in for Alan.
I don't particularly love it just because it's so early in the orbit.
Well, just because I've played with
What's
Alan
under
so
Rick?
much, I know what he'll do it with.
Well-
And 9s crush his range
To be- I mean-
majority of the time.
Yeah, majority of the time is right.
So lucky.
He obviously could wake up with anything at any point in time.
Rick
Yeah.
calls.
Rick makes the correct call.
Ace 5.
I would just have to play the
Back.
percentages there that it just absolutely crushes him most of the time.
Running out of outs here for Alan.
And we have our first casualty.
It's good out there,
He's not going anywhere.
He's got to wait.
We'll see
He's
if
not
Alan
going
wants to come
anywhere.
back here and chat with us at all.
Alan out in 9th place.
I'll watch it.
Yep, there's an extra seat over
Alan.
Alan.
I'm sure I'm gonna call it that.
Yeah.
All right, and now we're down to 8 players. And Ricky got a nice little bump up there.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I know that was so
Mike
funny.
with
I
the
was watching
king
it
jack,
online.
Greg with the king
Did you
jack.
see that?
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get out there telling that he got knocked out either.
Let's see. Not a whole lot going on here. A couple king jacks.
Greg calls 200.
A little limpy here
A
again.
little surprised to see, Greg limp on the cutoff here.
Mike Stack calls 200. Rick calls 200, and
This
that
is
checks our
an
option.
incident where the queen nine or the 5-3 can take control of his flop so easily. And
I actually thought we might see a raise from Annette there with all them
Stack
limpers again.
first, checks.
She's done that a few times now with less than premium
she
hands.
sure has.
Checks over to Greg.
She
Greg
always looks
bets
like
400.
she has some devious plans for her opponents. She just has that look about her, which is it's not easy to play against.
Greg bets.
Good job, Greg.
Mike folds. Rick folds.
He
Annette folds.
didn't have the best position out of everybody, but
11 minutes,
You got it
14
done.
seconds left in the blinds. Blinds are 100, 200.
not a particularly chatty table, is it?
No.
They must have got all their pleasantries
First
out
act
before they
is
started playing.
Papa Z.
Here's Annette with another huge hand. About the fifth one tonight, I think.
Papa Z calls 200.
Yeah. Her and Greg Merson are the only ones getting all the premiums tonight.
I don't think she's going to get too much out of it here, though.
No, not after the ace folded.
Rick calls 200.
Rick calls, Net's going to raise, and
Net
it's going
announces
to be
raise.
snappy folds from Mike and assume.
You know, that
Five on top, seven
calling the blind or the button with queen six,
Papa
I
Z
just
folds.
don't understand it.
Well, it's like he said, he we kind of heard him earlier talking about I was hoping to get lucky.
Yeah, I mean,
I knew it.
I don't even call the small blind
Net
there
takes
most
it
of the
down.
time.
No, I mean,
Because you're just going to lose way more than you're ever going to win.
no. Poker, as we know, as avid players, is a game of skill. You're trying to eliminate as much luck as possible. So if you're banking on getting lucky, you're not going to have
Right.
the best outcome for your game.
You know, you call with queen six. What do you do if queen hits and somebody
Steve
bets?
Dax.
What are you hoping for?
Right. Mike with an ace jack. Greg with a king 10.
Chris
Derby
calls
with king
200.
10
Derby
suited.
has the pretty king 10 suited.
Chris.
Originally
calls
my favorite
200.
hand in poker.
Oh, yeah. Chris with the queen 10. He limped in.
Then I wised up and decided aces would be my favorite hand.
Rick calls 200.
Another limp.
Every-
Cut off.
Everybody's
Texas
limped in
option.
here. How about a 4-8 flop for Papa Z? Let him take one down.
He does have his lucky
Get him a
tournament shirt on.
4-8 ace or something here. Ace 9-9. Nobody has a 9.
I do not see a 9 out there.
Checks around to Greg. And
Mike casually
Mike
flips
stack
out 500.
bets 500.
Quite
Mike bets his
nonchalant.
ace.
Action on Derby.
And you can pretty much
Fold.
fold around there because you know he's
Does he
never
fold?
betting without an ace or a 9 there.
And another spot where he could have made possibly another $8,000 to $1,000
folds.
more had he raised
Greg
pre-flop.
Melton folds.
You might get a king 10. You might get both the king 10s in there. A flop like that, harmless, and you take it down. It's got chip, chip, chip up. Can't be missing spots like that.
Way too much limping right now.
Action on Chris Becker.
It's still good.
Greg with a king queen. Steven a big blind with ace 7. Not a whole lot else.
And Greg with more paint here.
Raised to 525 by Greg Melton.
Greg's starting to pick up the aggression a little bit.
I like his raise size too. Steve's got chips in hand. He says, let's tango.
Steve Day calls 525.
So don't you remember? I had a
Two
straight
players,
flush earlier.
Steve Dack first.
Yahtzee!
And Steve hits his ace.
But we'll see how
Let's see how,
comfortable he is about it though. You know, it's not the strongest of aces. You know, Greg raised pre-flop.
425 bet by Steve Day.
There's another donk bet for
Yeah.
you.
Same situation as before.
Greg
He wasn't terribly comfortable with the flop, but he felt comfortable enough to bet.
I think Greg's going to continuation bet there about 99% of the time.
Without a doubt. You know, Greg has the new school mentality.
You don't get to
Of-
play
of
with it. I'm
When you
sorry.
raise pre-flop, you're generally going to make another bet on flop.
But that one's not worth anything.
First select will be Greg.
Tons of rags.
Yeah. I think if anybody wants to take it, it's going to do it.
Mike Stack calls 200.
Mike just limps in an early position with a 6-9 suited.
Another one of his favorite hands. I think, you know, a lot of people just love the thought of suited cards.
Steve Day calls
Well,
200.
I love
from the
to
small
too,
blind.
but
Chris Becker checks his option.
The thing about
I just don't play him that early position like that.
The thing about suited cards, you know, when you make a flush, it's, you know, everyone's looking for the flush. So you're not going to get paid as often as people
Right.
want to
Checks over to Mike
play
Stack.
those suited cards.
Mike bets 425.
Mike betting bottom pair. Steve also
Action on
with
Steve.
bottom pair, and Chris with the open-ended
It's
straight.
going to take a crowbar to get Chris off a open-ended straight draw here.
Steve folds.
Steve wisely folds.
Chris calls.
Needs a jack, 8, or king. And there's the jack.
Come on, Chris.
But, as we can see, there's
Yeah.
a 4 card straight on the board. I could see where Mike
But
might not
usually,
continuation here.
that usually will scare Mike to death.
Now, we talked about donk bets before being a bad thing. In this situation, I like Chris's lead out here
Chris
because
bet
it's forcing Mike to make a really tough decision with his bottom pair.
Mike folds.
It's pretty well played by Chris there. I like that. In most cases, I would probably be preaching a raise in the flop there, but I think with Mike's image and Mike's
For stacked is Mike
percentage
stacked.
of hands that would have a decent pair there, that flat calling on the flop is a fine thing to do.
Yes, ma'am.
And once again, we don't have a whole lot going on here.
We got deuces,
Ricky with deuces.
some duckies, Derby the ace of 8.
It calls 200.
These are more often than not the hands that will be dealt
Derby
on
calls
a
200.
hand-to-hand basis.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where aggression can help you chip up in these early
Steve calls
stages.
200.
Yeah, these are the hands on the edited TV shows you just don't see.
No, Norman Chad is
Chris
not
calls
chatting
200.
about the Jack 3 offsuit.
Thank you.
That's why I love watching the final table of the World Series
Absolutely.
live. You get to see all the monotonous, just fold.
Yeah, it shows you, personified the term grind. You can't win a tournament in 5 hands. You have to sit there, wait it out,
Checks
be
over to
patient,
Derby, but
and
Derby
play your
bets
best.
400.
Derby, with the only one with no pair or no part of this flop, is the one
Steve Day
betting.
calls.
I love it.
Chris
Steve calls with bottom. Chris
folds.
calls with top pair. And Ricky folds
Rick
his
folds.
deuces.
The Ducks go for a swim. Let's see if
800 bet by
Derby
Derby.
I love it.
says
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
no,
love
it
it.
says no break pads here.
And it wasn't even his bet.
Both A.
That's even better.
He wants to be a budget all the time.
Can you tell he has a
Chris
point?
checks.
That's even better.
He's 8 now.
Derby bets 800. Steve folds.
Now Chris has a decision here.
Chris folds.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he does it twice, I don't
Funny
think Chris
Chris.
is calling Jack 3 there.
Yeah,
You're okay, that
you got to
happens,
play
huh?
Derby's reputation. And that might be, that could have possibly been one of those hands where, hey, I'm on TV.
I'm winning it.
I'm gonna
I'm gonna win this hand.
I'm gonna show the guys at the shop tomorrow what I can do. I love it. It doesn't always take the best hand to win.
There's
the
Greg
first
with
toss.
another
And
big
does
hand.
Rick.
Greg
2
refuses
minutes,
to give
21
back his
seconds
good
left in the
cards.
round.
And I was shuffling with a sensor though. I think it triggered on the shuffle.
Annette with Jack Queen. Derby with Jack 10.
Call.
Steve with
Annette
another
calls 200.
suited one gapper.
Derby calls 200.
Steve with the Jason
Folds over
Somerville, the
Chris.
5-3 suited.
Chris folds. Small blind.
See, now that's the hand I love to play in position.
Raises.
The old 5-3 ball.
Yeah,
750.
especially when you get a bunch of limpers in front of you.
Oh yeah, you do love to crack some of the old 5-3. Heaven forbid it happens the other way though.
Oh, yeah. No, hey, I'm the first to admit
Folds
it.
around.
And we love you for it because you know what? That adds a little sauce to the game. Why not? And that's the beauty of playing these small home game poker games. Everyone's got a personality. You learn the personalities of everybody.
Dealer button.
Sometimes you prey on those personalities. But all in all, everyone comes back week after week
Oh, yeah.
and has a good time, shakes everyone's hand, and says, "Hey, I'll get you next time."
I get
First
hot,
act will be
but
an
by the
act.
time I get to the car, I'm over it.
I didn't eat my Wheaties today.
Yeah.
There's always another game to go play.
Derby with a suited connector. Annette with King 10.
Let's see if we have
Annette
another
calls 200.
husband-wife
Derby calls 200.
rivalry here. Battle for the couch.
Chris announces a raise.
And Chris is raising with the 3-6.
Hey,
This Chris has had his fourth beer now, evidently.
Hey, if you're gonna play it,
650 is the
you
bet.
do my
Oh
motto,
yeah, that's the way to
win
play
for a
it.
raise.
Oh man.
Because I mean, look what's behind him. You can literally see Derby
Action on
shaking,
net.
thinking about
Fold.
should I, shouldn't I?
Action on Derby.
And Kate when it starts, oh, if she calls, I'll call. Then she folds, and now he's gonna talk himself into it.
Derby calls 650.
Thanks for dealing, baby.
Problem.
Greg's trying to sweet talk the dealer.
And Derby flops second
Oh.
pair,
Derby
and
checks.
Chris flops a flush draw.
Can we see the 10 of hearts in the turn,
Sure
please?
you
Oh,
did.
Now it's my turn to get dirty.
We'll just call you Caboose.
What casino do you work at?
Come on, man.
On there.
I don't feel poker.
Chris bets 875.
Must have been
Is
some
that
hearts
850 or
folded in the deck here.
850?
Doesn't look like he has
850.
doesn't quite as many ounces as you would expect.
They're not gonna table games.
usually that's when everybody's folded, it'll take it
Call
out.
them slots, call them electronic.
Very smart machinery we got working at this place.
Derby announces a raise.
It's
Look at Derby.
Oh wow!
Look at Derby showing a new side.
I would not be surprised to
raises
see
to
Chris get it
1700.
all in here.
I don't know. He's got a lot of beer left.
ETLs, I think.
Yeah, you're right. VT side.
Chris
What?
calls.
Yeah, BT, yeah.
What does he have? What does he even have left?
He doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have enough left.
10
I
hearts.
didn't think. Now Derby's got
Yeah, now Derby's
a,
got
a
got the
straight
world.
draw and a flush draw
2000 bet by
also.
Derby.
Today was my first day. We're just doing training.
Derby kind of has that
Chris folds.
posture of I'm sitting behind the hog.
Yeah.
You want to come after it? Come after it.
Joan Jett and Heartbreakers.
Oh, yeah, what, the first night?
First night,
18th?
the 18th, yeah.
Ooh, Joe, yeah.
blind for it.
First act will be Derby.
What are they gonna do?
Blinds are up to 150, 300. 16 minutes, 50 seconds left in the blinds.
Derby must have limp
That
called
first
in that
night, the place
situation.
would be
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yes, he did. Steve with the Queen 10 of spades, Greg with an ace 9.
It's always busy when they have odds.
I think Steve's gonna open up a little bit here. Make a raise with the Queen 10.
Oh, there we go. Mike's
Steve
got a
Day
king
called
jack.
300. So does Greg Melton.
I think that invites Greg into call. Or
Oh,
Mike
so he
into
just
call.
lumped in. They were
Yeah.
153 and he's called.
Mike Stack calls 300. Ricky B calls 300. Net checks are option.
Ricky B says, I've seen poker on TV. They always get there with the old 5-7 suited.
And Steve flops a queen and a flush draw.
AKA the world.
The net flops second pair. Nobody
Checks
has
over
much
to
of
Steve
anything
Day.
else. Steve wants. You want him to put a small bet in here. but-
1,250
Yeah, why not? I
bet
mean-
by Steve Day.
Yeah. How much was the bet?
Okay.
We gotta get him them headphones after break.
Yeah.
Greg and Mike fold. Ricky
That looks
folds.
like over 1,000 on the bet.
It's like maybe 1250,
Net
which is
folds.
almost pot, I'd imagine. I would go what, four
Steve Day
ways?
takes that pot.
I think we're 1200 in the pot.
4 or 5 ways, yeah. There was 12 to 1,500 in there. I would have liked a little smaller bet there.
Because what are you really afraid of?
A bigger queen. That's about it. But then you still have outs against it. A lot of them.
You have a lot of outs, and you're sitting in a catbird seat with the top pair and flush draw.
Yeah, I'd like a smaller bet there and hoping for a raise so I can repop it.
Absolutely. And let's see. It's like I think Rick has the button here. See if he raises it to 7-8.
Annette calls.
It's like limp.
Derby raises 300 on top.
Derby says get those limps out of here.
Derby getting a little more aggressive than I've ever seen him.
I actually haven't played with him too much this season.
I've played with him not here, but at other places.
Yeah?
I've played with him several times.
Is he more of a?
He's usually been pretty passive
Pretty
most
passive?
of the time.
Ricky folds. Annette calls. 2 to the flop.
8-9 jack.
That would be awesome.
And Derby gets the top pair. It looks like this is probably going to be a bet and a fold here.
Net checks. Derby bet 600. And net
Bet,
folds.
check bet fold. Check bet fold.
I like
Wrap.
the half pot size bet there though.
Absolutely.
later.
I know, you didn't have any of that.
And Annette thinks she's got to read on
I was
Derby.
going to stay here and just keep counting how many times.
She's
they're
just
wrong.
really good at making top pair.
Get another one.
Or an overpair.
Steve Day to act first.
Ricky with the king, queen. Derby with the ace 10. Hey, we saw
Oh,
Derby.
Chris with eights. I was gonna say we're gonna get Chris all
Chris
in
Becker
here.
all in.
Yeah.
12.25.
I feel
See,
like.
he's only got 12.25. That's why I hated his call there with that flush draw.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think we all know. I think Chris knows that that wasn't one of his
Ricky
best of
D
plays.
calls.
Ricky calls with king
12.25.
queen.
Let's see if
Derby might give it a call here with ace 10.
he's already got a piece of his money in the blind here, getting 3-1 on his money.
I would absolutely call here and check it down.
Yeah, I mean he might be a little concerned. Ricky called fairly quick. Might think he's
Derby
outkicked.
folds. Opposite folds.
You didn't have
So I wouldn't have minded a call or a fold in that
That was
situation.
His
I
action
might need
classes
a little
are
bit,
paying
I
off,
think.
aren't
Good
they?
luck. I know, I actually woke up with a hand.
Remember, gentlemen?
Pocket eights for Chris.
Chris fading the old king and queen.
Queen king for Ricky.
I'm glad I got on.
Lean in the window.
And Ricky wastes no time.
And we most likely have our.
Good
Yeah,
game,
there's our
guys.
second victim.
Hey.
Good game, Chris.
Yeah, if he wasn't going to call, he would jump in.
And we're down to 7.
Would you fold?
Would you have,
Derby, what'd you fold?
beating?
Derby.
I would beat him.
What'd you fold?
Ace 10.
Okay, we're down to 7 players.
I'm glad
This is
nobody else called.
a good spot for people to start opening up their hand ranges a little bit and
We gotta keep calling.
being a bit more aggressive. As you can see by the screen, we have a bunch of junk.
Annette with 3s. Steve with a king 9 suited.
Depending on his, he might be in a. Where's he
Is
at?
he in a blind?
Oh, that's where the button's at.
You're so full.
Raised to 800 by Annette.
Yeah, he is in big blind.
She hit the whole board.
He might stick around.
Yeah, I'm going to say Steve will call here.
Steve Day
He likes
calls
to
800.
defend.
Tell me now, did you beat my king 10?
He
Which
might
is
look
not
like,
necessarily a bad
He
thing.
might look like a nice guy, but he is ruthless on the poker table.
Oh, that
And
one.
Steve flops top pair.
Will he lead out is the question.
No, she's got the lead, I think. Or he checked.
725 bet
I know,
by
I can't
Annette.
believe I
She's so
folded.
nice, Steve.
I know, top 2
Look at her sweet talking him. All part of her game.
What'd she say?
Just me and you, Steve. Just the two of us. In a
Steve
gondola
calls
in
725.
Italy.
Then on the way home, I was thinking about the odds. I was like, the only way she has it, she has
Interesting
the other
card.
two kings. The other
Lots
two
of trips.
are-
1,000.
1000 bet by Annette.
You had 2
You could even, you can see from here Steve's eyebrows kind of raise up and kind of
Yeah, the only
come
two
together
that
thinking,
Put it together, Steve.
is it possible that she just had the old
it was king
ace
10,
jack and she
so she had pocket
bet the
six.
flop and just got there? Queen 10?
Man, I didn't buy enough beer. They didn't have any 6
And we're joined by Chris here. You can see why he was one that had to get in the wild card game.
There's our first dose of a burn tonight. We'll see if Steve can put this all together here.
She would be correct.
Yeah, she would.
I tell you what, right here, against a player like Annette, I would have to call. Just because I know how aggressive she is.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few, premiums that haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
Ace King, Ace Queen, Ace 10.
Smaller pocket pairs.
Steve Day calls 1000.
Good call,
Yeah.
Steve.
One
Not
card
easy.
to come.
And if you're
Cat
good,
text me, don't do it.
if you're good on the turn, you're good on the river.
1,500 bet by Annette.
Yeah.
Gotta give Annette some credit here, though.
She's fired 3 barrels at it.
She did not let off the gas.
We had 10 players in this table.
No,
I'm just a firm believer here. If you call the turn with that river card, you have to
Honey,
call.
I didn't have
Right.
chips. I didn't have any chips to start with, so I didn't have any to lose.
Yeah, Steve is really in a quandary here.
Maybe I don't need any more beer.
Obviously, did not have the plan that we were discussing of you got
Yeah,
call a turn, call a river.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to know that if a card like that comes and you've called the turn, if you think you're good on the turn, you got to think you're good on the river.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't call the turn.
His curiosity might force a call where he otherwise might fold, but we'll see what he comes up with here.
Yeah,
Steve
you had
calls.
to.
I count that proudly says 2 pair.
Steve Day calls and takes down.
Not to mention the shit is the 3s and the 6s as opposed to the
Yeah,
9s
but
up.
You still want to keep that, I know.
He wants, he loves it.
I didn't hear that.
You never put a blind in.
Nice call.
Thank you.
And I thought she was gonna get away with that one. You can see that she's a little upset with the fact that
A lot of people think you can bluff Steve. A lot.
Small one, 150, Steve.
It's not.
And you gotta really pick your spots to bluff Steve.
He's another player that has really improved his
Oh,
game.
yeah, absolutely.
He's put a lot of time and energy into, making himself a better player.
I should have pushed all in.
Greg raises.
Papa limped, Steve completed, and now Greg is gonna raise.
That would have been an epic bet.
Annette says she should have went all in on the river. That
Raised
makes
to
it even more
825.
suspicious to me most of the time.
It does, but at the same time, I think her fold equity goes way up in that situation.
Well, she wants me to
Because
call.
she just
Papa Z calls
she doesn't look like a
825.
person that would bluff a lot. She does.
Oh,
she,
yeah.
She
Oh,
plays.
she absolutely
she
does.
plays
Steve
well.
folds.
I didn't put you on calling.
But
pre-flop, you know.
in a situation like this, there's so much at stake, and you need to get to the final 3 players. It may have gotten through.
Actually, on Steve to act first. I'm sorry.
Greg flops top pair.
I thought you called for some reason.
Another situation where
He'll bet, Papa will fold.
1,600 bet by Greg takes it down.
That's
another situation where that's why you raise pre-flop. Because you just don't make a pair
Right.
often enough.
and against Papa, you can have nothing there, and
But
if
moves
he doesn't
with
have
bet
part
first.
of it,
I mean,
or
obviously,
a huge draw, he's
obviously
folding.
against Papa, you're a little concerned.
Right.
5
Anytime
minutes,
he's in the
50 seconds
pot.
left in the
Well, you
blinds.
just bet it,
But when
and
you
if he calls, you're done.
Yeah. You avoid him flopping a miracle.
Right.
If he calls the flop, you just shut it down. No big deal.
Papa with
And
queens.
we might actually have a situation right now that explains what we're talking
Papa Z
about.
calls 300.
He just limps with queens, and Steve raises
Steve
with
announces
fives.
a raise.
I have a feeling Papa might jam
Raise
all
to
his marbles in the
725.
middle here.
And Papa there, you never know. It could be suited clubs, as Papa likes to
Could
say.
be.
Could be the king 4 puppy
See
dog
flop.
feet, or it could be
Papa Z
fucking
back.
queens,
Pocket
aces,
clubs.
kings.
Yeah. Oh, Papa flops
Both players
its
check.
top set.
Says Yahtzee.
600 bet by Papa Z.
And Steve just gets out of the way.
Wisely.
Steve folds.
What,
Yeah, I
a
don't-
5 on the turn there would have been just brutal.
Been awful, yeah. Awful for Steve. Great for Papa Z.
I know.
Yeah, in a case like that, I think, I don't know. It's very close between limping behind Papa with a small pair,
And that tag first.
just because
They're still here.
he does like to limp call a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So
a
if you-
lot.
So
And he'll limp call a lot of hands that the pocket fives beat, too.
and that's the difference between the King Jack in the big blind versus the 5s,
Right.
after Papa limped.
Folds over to Greg. Greg folds.
And we may have our first walk of the evening.
Mike folds.
Yes.
Rick gets
And
a
we
walk.
do.
Celebrates in jubilation.
First walk of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
What a way
I
to
was gonna say
come
first hand he hasn't lost for a while.
Free chips.
Derby to act first.
Net with the suited connector.
Where'd all of our monsters go?
Yeah, just really slowed down,
We
Mike.
lose two
Well,
players.
maybe we'll get a diamond flop here.
Ooh, buddy. Again, that's Paul Boston. Find him on Facebook. Tell him about how mean he is.
Mike Stack calls 300.
I love the brutality when I'm not in.
Absolutely. For once, someone else is steaming out of their ears.
Rick calls 300. Annette checks her option.
Annette flops the set.
Extra
She
on Rick.
continues to just.
She just makes pairs.
Annette bets 1200.
Yeah, she
That
wouldn't
all?
have run that huge bluff against Steve.
Annette all in for 1200.
And she'll probably take it down right
It's
here.
fine.
Yeah.
All players fold.
She didn't have a whole lot left, and there was 900 in the pot.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That increases her stack almost. What?
Yeah, by
80%?
50%. Yeah.
But moves suited, or suited. Papa Z to act first.
You're big.
Pocket fives making their way around the table again.
Presto. Papa limping in with the ace
Folds
six.
over to Rick. Actually, Papa Z is in for the 300. Net calls.
One raise.
Derby
has
raises.
8 on top.
800 on top.
I was in the math, somebody didn't write.
Bring in the pain.
I was gonna say that should take it
Annette
down.
folds.
Yeah, I'll probably get it through.
I like that raise there.
How much I live
You know.
He owes me.
Yeah.
Last big tournament we played him and knocked
Had a small pocket there.
Hope the announcers are picking up that this was a spousal situation here.
Steve Day to act first.
Let's see some cards. Let's see some big ones.
And that'll probably get it all in here with ace 10.
You'll see the rest of it.
it.
See. And
Folds over to Annette.
more than likely gonna work.
18, I'm all in.
Annette all in with 1800.
And Derby hoping he can call.
Wow. We might need large counts in after all this is said
Derby
and done.
folds. Papa Z
You'll
folds.
see that later.
So that puts her up around 2,500 again.
What you like so well.
Couple more of those, and she'll be over 10 big blinds and be able to comfortably play
Rick to
again.
act first.
Yeah, one double
25
up from
seconds
being
left in the
right
blinds.
back in it.
We'll be taking a break after this hand.
All right, we'll be taking a break here shortly.
There's a
Oh,
nice
we
hand.
got queens. Derby with a jack 9 suited. Ricky with queen jack.
Queen Jack for Ricky. He might look at. He's looking at the table like, what's gonna happen here? Am I gonna have a situation where I can
Mike Stack
see a
announces a
flop
raise.
or
650.
A little more than 3 times the flop. Papa Z might call with the jack 9 suited.
it is a puppy dog feet.
Yeah, Papa Z loves those pocket clubs.
We be clubbing is his motto.
Rick calls 650.
Ricky calls with the
I
queen
thought-
jack, and
I
Papa
could-
lets the jack 9
I
suited
can't see
go.
through Ricky's sunglasses, but I
Steve
I
Day
could see
calls
it in his
650.
eyes that he kind of wanted to stick around for this one.
Yeah.
To quote him from before, looking to get lucky.
Queen jack flop here would be.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Steve in there as well?
He could.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see what he did. No,
Steve got in there with
Nobody,
the
nobody,
king 7?
nobody is respecting Mike's pre-flop raise.
One at a time, John. One at a time.
Oh, and
You're
Ricky
pushing me off,
flops
but I
the
don't know.
open-ended straight draw.
No, this is what we've been waiting for.
Mike Stack all in.
Good luck.
Ricky might call.
21.50, 21.25.
Ricky's got his thinking cap on. Let's see if he's got his gambling pants on to match.
He can't think his 2 overs are any good right now. He's got to be thinking he needs an 8 or a king.
Sometimes you're tough spots, you know. Mike could be running a stop and go with 2 big cards, or any 2 raise pre-flop and jam an A flop.
Yeah, I don't see the stop and go in Mike's.
Hey, we don't know what books he read.
Well, hey, I know. I'm just saying. I just that's not a move I would expect from him.
He might have like a Kindle Fire or something just blazing through him. Books on tape. Who knows? What we do know is Steve will be folding.
He lets the open-ended straight go.
Does anybody care?
Yeah, we're on break.
And then he wants to rabbit hunt.
And the pain.
That's why you don't do the rabbit hunt.
I had a jack queen and I folded it. I know I shouldn't have folded it.
That's why you don't rabbit hunt.
Rabbit hunting.
We'll be back in approximately 7 minutes.
It's when you make the decision that counts, not what would have happened.
Yeah. Coulda, woulda, shoulda has never got anyone.
I appreciate your fold.
We'll be back in 10 minutes.
Is he chipping
No.
out?
No.
Papa's the dealer next to you.
Calling me all in on the call.
Yeah.
You should talk to me.
Well, I don't know if we all.
I mean, it was only 'cause it was half my stack. I mean, I didn't want to bet half my stack on just trying to catch it straight.
You can't just give me a little break here tonight. It's the first halfway decent hand I've had all freaking night.
I know you'd have been pissed if I called that.
I'd have been pissed off.